Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to this brand new podcast called Turntable Tales, where Brandon, the Hall of Famer, and I discuss our vinyl journeys, emphasizing the passionate, the emotional, and the beauty of music. We're excited to bring you this new series. We hope you enjoy it, and we look forward to hearing your stories about how music has impacted your life, whether you listen on vinyl, cassette, streaming music, or any other media. Let's jump right in.
Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, what is shaking, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of Turntable Tales, the podcast where we share authentic stories about music and vinyl with an emphasis on the nostalgic and the emotional. I'm Jason, and I'm here with my co-host, Brandon, known on YouTube as the Hall of Famer. What is up, Brandon?
Doing good, man. Doing really good. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm stoked. Honestly, I'm stoked to be doing this. I've been thinking about it for a long time, so I'm glad we're finally doing it, man. This is cool.
Yeah, I'm excited too, man. This is the fun part of this musical journey that we go through. Is kind of diving into all the good emotional aspects of how music moves us and the memories that it marks and all of that. So this is going to be a blast.
Yeah, I agree, man. And we talked about it too, man, kind of before where, there's a lot of discussion and, we've been involved in a lot of them, and it's not to take anything away from it, the technical side of this stuff and, doing shootouts and talking about, well, what's the latest UHQR and this record sounds better than that record and stuff. But with this one, I think we really wanted to go to, and you and I kind of go this way just on our own anyway. We go wandering off into the emotional part of it, like you said, and those connections, that nostalgia, and just what the music means and kind of how it touches you and all that stuff. So another big reason why I was excited to do this with you, because that's kind of, I don't get a lot of opportunity to talk about music in that way.
Right. And I think that's one of the things, excuse me, that has gotten just kind of, with the whole resurgence of vinyl and those of us, which is a ton of us out here now that have been collecting forever. I think it is so easy to get into the hunt and the search and the finds and all that type of stuff. And, all the guys that are buying all these things, they love the music, but sometimes we just forget to talk about what the music means to us. We talk about the pressings, we talk about, what I found, we talk about it's one of our favorite bands, but it's but that song on that album, when you sit back, where does it take you? Where did it take you? Excuse me. And so, yeah, that's kind of another cool element to dive into here. I think it's going to be kind of neat.
Yeah, absolutely. I've kind of said it before where in a way, I think things sort of changed once we sort of got aware of matrix codes and different labels. And this one's on the original Vertigo and this one's a reissue on a Vertigo and all these different things where that kind of gets in my head now when I'm going through stuff. It's like, oh, wait, is that an OG or is that a reissue? If it is, where was it pressed? And I've kind of used this phrase in the past where ignorance was bliss when I was before all of that stuff. And I would just go to the rack, find the Doors. Oh, the Doors, cool. Pull it out. If it wasn't too scratched up, take it home and listen to it. And I was completely oblivious to any of the inner workings of where this record came from. It was just, this is Strange Days. I just want to take it and go listen to it. So there was, I think, this sort of, I don't know, quote unquote blissfulness where I wasn't caught up in, hey, is this a good pressing or, and all of this stuff. So even though, I'm as much into it as anyone now. I want to, especially we spend so much money on this stuff. Yeah, I want to make sure I get a good pressing, but in a way, I almost curtail that a little bit where my collecting habits is very much like trying to sort of connect with that person that didn't really think about that stuff as much. It was way more about the music. So I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think it's just kind of it's a natural progression of us as collectors. And like you said, don't get me wrong, it's just as exciting to go out and find that rare thing that you've been looking for and that, that white label promo and all that kind of stuff. I just think kind of with this format, with YouTube, the VC, and all that kind of stuff, just really kind of getting down to what individual songs and albums mean to us, how they connect back to childhood and those type of things. It's just one of the elements that's gotten a little bit left behind in terms of a lot of videos focusing strictly on that. So this is just kind of one more fun way to make sure that we're talking about and taking advantage of every single aspect that vinyl records bring to the table. And this is just one more great piece of it.
I love it. It's going to sound cheesy, but I'm literally so stoked to to do this, man. So maybe we get into, first episode, maybe we jump into a little bit of our origins with vinyl and sort of like where those early connections kind of started. You want to jump in and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Obviously you think way back to some of the memories that you had before you could have memories kind of thing. My very first memory of a vinyl record is I remember when I was younger, my parents say they used to have to force me to eat. I wouldn't eat a lot, even though I'm like 6'5", 250 now. But back when I was a kid, I didn't eat very much. So they used to bribe me sometimes. And I remember I'd seen this, let's just say this artist on cable TV one time. And there was a song that she sang and I really, really liked it. And I just kept telling him, I want that song. I want that song. I want that song. So they took me out to buy me my first 45 of this particular song, and it ended up being Debbie Boone, You Light Up My Life.
Okay.
I love that song to death. And I remember my parents had one of those little flip down turntables with the speakers that open from the side, and I just remember putting that thing on and just playing it over and over and over. And every time it got to the end and I had to start it back over again, I would have to lean over to the speaker and tell Debbie how awesome she was, and then I was going to play her song again, like I was talking to her in the speaker. Dude. And then I would start it over again. Oh, that was so good. Now I'm going to play it again. If I got to play you again, and just kept playing it over and over. And that was really kind of the one that I remember, that one record I remember, because then my mom said after that, you ended up getting more and more and more. There was disco stuff you used to hear. There was all of this. And again, we would bribe you to eat. And she would go, and she would say, 4:30 in the morning, we would know when you were awake because we would just hear that turntable turn on. And sometimes we go down the hall and check on you. You wouldn't turn on any of the lights. It would be pitch dark in your room. You just get out of bed, sit on the floor, and start spinning those 45s. And I don't even remember that. I only remember the Debbie Boone piece. But like where you are today, it's just a natural progression from where you are since day one. You just sit and spinning, and you were just infatuated by music.
And I love how sort of innocent that is in a way, right? Because I feel the same way with my early days of listening to records, but it's sort of like, it's not like anyone said you should listen to this record. It's not like, it's like you just had some connection with this record as a kid, completely raw, completely, and just vibed with it so much you just want to hear it over and over and over, man. That is so cool.
Yeah. And it's a strange time to think about, because as I even got a little bit older, like there's even still other very specific songs and very specific moments where I just remember feeling so overwhelmed by what I was, not even what I was hearing, what I was feeling because of what I was hearing. It started with that Debbie Boone. I don't know what it was, but that song just freaking, it moved me as a child. And it was like, something's going on with my little body that I don't understand here, but it feels good and I want to feel it again, kind of thing.
Do you have a copy of that now?
Yeah.
Or yeah, that's cool. Throw it on once in a while, channel that little kid again.
Yeah, most definitely. But that was the one that was the one that started my whole vinyl life right there.
That is so cool, dude. When I think back as, where I had a more sort of intentionality into what I was listening to, because my parents, they hooked me up with a turntable really, really young too. They would teach me how to use the house turntable and stuff. And then when I was probably like 5 or 6, I remember they got me one of those flip tops and everything, and,
Right.
and they taught me how to use it and all that stuff. And, they would get me like, the Star Wars soundtrack, and I would just play that thing endlessly. Or it'd be like, the little Star Trek records that came with a comic, and I got into that stuff. And I probably even taught myself how to read just by like listening to the soundtrack and then, looking at the comics.
Right.
But one thing I got into really early that I fell in love with was big band music. It's funny because we're talking about, late 70s, maybe into the early 80s. And here's this little kid just loving like Glenn Miller and Count Basie and Duke Ellington and all of that stuff. And I remember having this little box set, and it probably had like 2 or 3 records in it. And it was like a, compilation. And I freaking loved that stuff. And I don't know if it just reminded me of like the kind of movies we would watch on TV, maybe at that time we're older and stuff, and it would have that as kind of a soundtrack. Or,
Right.
my dad would listen to some of that stuff. I remember he had like a 78 of like the Ink Spots, Someone's Rocking My Dreamboat, and so I got it in my head, just those early singers, those crooners, which by the way was way before my time, but I just was hearing that stuff as a little kid. And I just loved it, man. I would have my little, box of big band music, and we'd move somewhere, and I'd make sure I take that with me. Where's my big band records, Mom? And stuff.
That's great.
But that was really early, and so consequently, I still love that stuff. Like I have a big old bassy collection now, and it got me into kind of more into jazz, as kind of has become more popular now, which is like the hard bop and cool jazz, Miles and Coltrane. But that was kind of what started all that, was listening to those big jazz bands. And I still get that feeling, man, when I play that stuff now and put on a Count Basie record, and it's like just totally takes me puts me in the time machine and drops me off in like 1980 all over again.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. That actually explains a lot. 'Cause I remember you making a comment before about how much you love Basie, and I didn't get a chance to ask you about it in the discussion that we were having, because I was like, really? That's like the last thing I expected to hear from him was Basie was his guy. But that makes a lot of sense now.
Well, what's funny, specifically Basie, is that my dad used to listen to these radio programs on the weekend in the Bay Area. So there was a guy named Al Collins. His nickname was Jazzbo, and he was pretty big in the jazz world, especially at that time during the 70s and 80s and stuff. And he had a radio show, and I think he moved around the country, but there was a time where he was settled into the Bay Area, and so we'd get to hear him like Saturday nights or whatever, and he would do his jazz show. Well, his theme song was a Count Basie track. And so every time the show was ready to start, Count Basie would come on, and the name of incidentally, for people that are interested, the name of the song is Blues in Haas's Flat. And I didn't know that for decades, but then I finally discovered it through the internet. What is that song called? But that was Basie, and I would hear it every weekend to introduce his show, and then get to hear a bunch of other jazz stuff later.
Yeah.
But it just stuck in my head, and so when I, was old enough to kind of start buying my own records, and kind of really, Basie was like one of the first people that I had memory of, or even any knowledge of walking into a store and being like, okay, look at this massive record store. Where do I start? It was like, okay, Count Basie, and I was never disappointed, but, so yeah, that's kind of where the Basie connection came from, was just listening to that Jazzbo show. And then, again, I never knew what I was listening to until later the internet came up, and it was like, who is that sings that, or that performs that music on the Jazzbo show? So anyway, that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah. Like you said, it kind of goes back to that innocence, where you're not being necessarily steered in a certain direction, or you're sitting back and just taking something in that's talking to you.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Well, and it's funny too, on that note too, with innocence, with both of like, the records that you and I both talked about, is kind of like, not that that's changed over time, but like now with the vinyl community and so many people talking about records and stuff, and then you get a lot of things in your head just watching YouTube or listening to podcasts or different things as you're trying to learn more about records. There's a lot of narratives and a lot of bands or tunes that you don't hear about. And not saying I want to go down this path, but almost like a sort of a judgment starts to happen as you grow up. And it's kind of like, why are you listening to that instead of this?
Right.
This is what you should be listening to, kind of thing. But it's great having that connection from an early time of like, look, I just listen to what, like you said. And I love that you put it this way too, not just what sounds great, but what makes me feel great. Like that's where I'm at with it.
Right. That's exactly it. And I think that's really, as a kid, that's the beauty of, kind of even just taking in the world as a whole. Obviously there's a lot in the world we have to be cautious about because there's, all kind of bad coming after you and so forth. But just kind of in general, it's just like kid just wants to explore, just wants to take in, just wants to learn, just experience new things, and whatever feels good. And long before you have to be one of the cool kids or have to be, worried about what your buddies are going to say about you because now you're in your teenage years or blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. So. Yeah, you can't look anybody in the face and say, hey, you got any Count Basie? And they're like, no, but I have Led Zeppelin and Van Halen. Get out of here with this Count Basie stuff.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Yeah, cool, man. So do you have something to share that kind of connects you to that and connects you to some emotions around music?
Yeah, I mean, God, there are so many stories in my life that, most of the music that I love has a very strong connection with. I'm almost kind of like a newborn duckling where I have like stuff imprints on me so hard. As soon as I associate any event with an album or a song, it is there forever and never leaves. And one of the big ones that really kind of stands out is, kind of starting off with this album right here, which is Van Halen, You 812. Of course, that was an absolute classic. Sammy's second album with them came out back in 1988. And there's a couple of, a couple of really strong memories that come with that. And one of the best ones is kind of connected to the song Feel So Good off of this album. Because I remember I kind of really had my first girlfriend that popped up at the time. This is around 1988, right? And we had kind of talked in school a little bit and, for a couple of days or whatever. And then that weekend, we had a basketball trip. And so, we had to meet at the gym, 2:00, whatever it was, get ready to leave for the bus and blah, blah, blah. And so again, this is back in 1988. So this is long before the days of cell phones and all of that. So you're not texting and all that kind of stuff. So there's a payphone that was right beside the gym, and I went and called her before we left. And we chatted for a while, like maybe 20 minutes or so. And then it was time to go load on the bus. And this is maybe like the fourth time I've spoken to her outside of the 2 or 3 times at school. We had just met that week. And I remember getting on the bus, pull out the Walkman, we started taking off, and I had that Van Halen album in my Walkman. And I remember when the song Feel So Good came on, and it's just kind of going through the whole process, the lyrics of like, yesterday I saw my love life shine straight ahead in front of me. You never really know when love will come or go. And then, it just kind of goes into the feel so good, feel so nice when love comes around and all of that. And it's like when you're right there on the verge of having your first girlfriend, it's like those lyrics are just ringing and connecting with you to no end. And I remember just listening to that song on repeat on the entire trip. And it was just one of those on top of the world type of moments, And like to this day, I cannot even look at that album cover or think about or hear that song without going right back to that moment. Like I'm completely transported right back to that freaking payphone sitting right beside the back entry door to the gym, and just what an awesome moment that was, to be your first girlfriend, your first crush, your first love, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that album is very connected.
Oh, that's so cool. It's like one of the first major turning points that you have, and like even turning point isn't enough, right? It's like you go through this transformation at that time, right? And I can remember that too. It's like there's just something that happens to you that you will never be the same, and it's imprinted on your mind and your heart and your soul. And interesting just how much music can like tie into that too. Yeah. I kind of wish I'd picked one because that is so powerful.
Yeah, that was, it's just one of those, every time people talk about their first loves and all that kind of stuff, it's like, what could be better than to have a theme song that's connected to it, you know? And that was kind of one of the things I thought was so, when I look back on it, that I think was so great about Sammy and kind of going into Van Halen and all of that, is Sammy was already so well known for, he was so good at bringing those elements of kind of love and happiness and those type of topics into, you know, a very big name band, mainstream rock kind of thing. And I think it was good for stuff like that to be out there for, you know, teenagers, teenage boys like us out there at the time, where love was not exactly the topic of most things that came into our lives, so to speak, you know? So to have one of your big favorite artists being able to put something out there that could capture a moment and cement a moment like that for you, where you felt genuinely just happy and loved and with someone, and, you know, just all the excitement that comes with meeting somebody new. That was huge.
That's so cool. It's funny when I think back to those moments for me. I don't even know if it's like a love song or that kind of music. It almost doesn't even matter. And I'm sort of making the argument, I guess, that it doesn't even matter so much what it is. It's just that it gets looped into this emotions that you're going through. Because when I start thinking back, since you mentioned, it's such a great great connection to make with music and your first love and everything, is like, I think back to like Jesse's Girl, like Rick Springfield. I remember that being on the radio all the time. And then like You Dropped a Bomb on Me was like always on. So it's so funny. It's like, how can I connect You Dropped a Bomb on Me with like my first love, you know? But it's like, it was there in the background, you know? So when I hear it, I still think about that, just because that was what was going on in the background, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I was saying the stuff about, you know, Sammy and the type of lyrics that he brings to the table. But like at the very beginning, when I said it's just really a matter of like it imprints on you. Like it just, you know, and once it's there, it's just this automatic association, and you don't have to explain it. It's associated with that emotion and that feeling, which is awesome.
It's just part of your DNA.
Right.
Yeah. It's like I've said before too, is that like with stuff like that, it goes beyond criticism. Like you can't be rational. You can't have an objective. If somebody asks you, well, why do you like that or what, it's like, I'm not going to sit here and be objective and say, well, the guitars are this or the drums or that. It's like, no, it's just imprinted in my DNA at this point because of, you know, what was going on at this time in my life. I can't be objective about it. I couldn't even tell you whether it's a good song or not. It doesn't matter. You know, It's just that it now is the audio that or the audio version or whatever you want to say. Sometimes I just like to say it's like a time machine, really, because it's that powerful for me, where I'll just go and grab a Journey record and put on a song just because I want to remember something.
Right.
And it takes me there, you know, and it's like a trip. It's a real live time machine that happens through music. The conduit is music.
Right.
And it just lets you relive that moment. Like that is an amazing thing.
Yeah. And I really like what you were saying there about, you know, you don't have to justify it or explain it of why you like it and why you don't. I've always kind of related music to almost like getting a massage, really kind of being the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And you know, for the most part, no one ever comes around and says, how come you like it a little bit softer? Like,
right.
How come you like it a little bit deeper? Like everyone just says you like it because it feels good. Like that's the way it feels good to you. Yep. And to me, music is the exact same thing. It's just whatever makes you feel good is rubbing you the right way. Roll with it.
That's the perfect way to put it. And you always have a way of wrapping things up in a bow that make total sense, man. And that is it. That is it right there. Yeah, I think for me, I chose, you know, and this is going back way before, you know, discovering girls and stuff, but some of my earliest memories that sort of came full circle as a kid, and I literally have, it's funny because I talk to my girlfriend a lot about like, you know, getting nostalgic, and I'll connect stuff like, you know, we're like this weekend, we went to the last Blockbuster, you know, she took me there for my birthday because she knew I wanted to go there someday. And so the whole way there, I'm telling stories about, I used to work there and I remember this and I remember that. But, so I really have these kind of, what I was going to say is that I just have a ton of memories still about my childhood, and they go way, way back. Mm-hmm. You know, even if I couldn't, even talk. Like I can still have an image of me being in a space and hearing music or whatever it is. Oftentimes the memory is connected to music. And some of those earliest memories of music were the Grateful Dead, and it's stuff like this, Europe 72,
Nice.
and then Skull and Roses, their live album, double LP. And going back to like what you said is that, I think we agree on, is like, I can't tell you whether that's good or not. All I can tell you is it's in my DNA. It was just there when my brain was just forming. And so, I just love it to this day. And it just brings me back to those moments. And fortunately, it is great music. Once I kind of revisit it later and stuff, it's like, man, this is actually, I could be a little bit more objective about it. It's like, okay, this is actually really great. But more so, it's just how one of the tracks, like I can listen to Sugar Magnolia, for example, and it's like, boom, I'm back at my uncle's house and he's singing, his falsetto and all this stuff. And, and singing Sugar Magnolia and stuff. And so I have that memory, and that's taken me back 40 years, or I could listen to like, Wharf Rat, just a really sensitive song, Jerry Garcia tune, and think about some other memory about my mom or something, and, and so it's been, in a way it's even become, and even though it's connected me to those moments my whole life, but then as I get older, I get maybe a little bit even more nostalgic about it, where now it almost has deeper meaning. Now it's like memories of my parents I really cherish them because they're no longer here. And so, it really kind of connects me. And now those memories mean even more because that time machine means even more. It's one thing to go back in time where, I was a kid and all this stuff, and it's more about what was happening. But then when you lose someone, or maybe they're just not a part of your life for whatever reason, it could be a friend, it could be a romantic partner, and hearing that song will connect you to that moment. Now you're connecting with people that you don't even have the option of connecting with anymore. And it becomes like even more powerful.
Right.
There was a time when my mom first passed, going back about 10 years, and I imagine people can relate to this, where I couldn't even listen to the Grateful Dead because it was so tied into her story. Wow. My parents were divorced when I was about 6 years old, and so I grew up with my mom, and it was always whatever the latest Grateful Dead record, and we listened to other stuff too, but there was always something about the Grateful Dead, and so when she passed, I was like, I don't even know if I'll ever be able to listen to the Dead again. I kind of went through this thing where it's like, it's just too much, it's too intense. Yeah. Which again, just speaks to the power of music, where it's like, I can go about my day and then the Grateful Dead click on and I'm like, oh, I can't hear that. It's like, it's just too painful. And, unfortunately after, and I mean, it was probably a year or two of Grateful Dead abstinence, I was finally able to put it on and kind of, grieve and deal with stuff to the point where now it makes me happy because now I can think about her, and I can, and my dad now, he's gone too and stuff. And so anyway, the connection for me, like I said, just takes me back to my childhood, early days with my parents when things were still good. And now that they're gone, it's even got more meaning. And it's interesting. And like I said, like I'll go intentionally play something and go, you know what? I'll be thinking about my dad maybe for the day, and I'll be like, yeah, I remember we used to do this and it was cool and I miss him. I'm going to go play some Grateful Dead, And it's like this cathartic thing almost where he's with me again, or, whatever you want to say. Like we're sharing those moments we used to share so much when he was here. And it's just, it just becomes a really emotional thing. I'll probably sit there and tear up and stuff and just kind of go through, a little grieving, maybe 20 minutes of grieving or whatever it is. Not just grieving, but just, sharing that moment that I miss and stuff. Yeah. And anyway, not to take it to a sad place, but I just think it can take you anywhere. It can take you to a happy place. It can take you to a place where, you want to be with someone again. And so you play that music and it can take you back to that time in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, but that's exactly where those are the type of places that it should take you. I mean, it's like, in essence, what has happened there, it's like that music has become a part of your mom. It's like, so I like to think about it that way, just in terms of it, like the music came if it came into your family, and it just became like one more connection piece that has really cemented that connection between you and your mom and you and your dad, and like I said, just the fact that, like I said, they have to go all that time without listening because it's just too much and too overwhelming. I mean, again, it just shows that there was something that was left behind here that is still very much a piece. I'm not exactly sure how I want to put that, but just keeps you very in touch with your mom. And when it's right there in front of you, you feel it and you experience it. And it's like, if that is not a magic potion, if you will, like there's very few things that can do that the way music can. Like we can take all the pictures that we want and all the videos that we want and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, I almost guarantee that music will probably be the one thing that'll connect you to someone like that in ways that nothing else can.
It's a great way to put it. And you were making me think, like, what if music wasn't part of it? Would I have those memories as much, or would I have that sort of emotional connection as much? Because music kind of ties it up, I can revisit that. I was thinking too, and I've thought about this in the past, it's a good time to bring it up. I don't know, have you ever seen the movie with Tom Cruise called Minority Report?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And there's this scene where he's lost, his son, I think, and then his wife, they got divorced and stuff. Well, he goes home and he pulls out this little a thing that projects them in like a hologram, and he can revisit, his wife is there and his son and stuff.
Right.
And it's like, that is what a record is to me. It's like, I can come home and it's like pulling out that little hologram and putting it on the turntable, and I'm exactly what he's doing in my mind. I'm not seeing it in 3D, but it just, that scene really was moving, because it's like, yeah, here he is connecting with things he's lost and stuff, and it's a way to remember. And like you said, pictures and stuff, but music even more so. It's just like, there's just some element that, I don't know what it is, man. It's like, I guess they say the sense of smell is like super powerful. When you smell something, that maybe it can take you back to being a kid, but something about music too, man, that's just so powerful.
Yeah. It opens up something emotionally. Like it when it imprints on you, it almost creates the key to the door. And now anytime you go put that song back on, it can open up that little door inside of your heart or your mind. And okay, we're back. Open up, come right in, and you're right back to where you were. It really is amazing when you think about it.
I've been someone that uses the word nostalgic and nostalgia freely, but I sometimes get a sense that people maybe minimize, or I don't know what to say. Like somehow if you're connecting something nostalgically, like you're not being objective enough about it. Maybe it's like, well, yeah, I get the nostalgia piece. Like, I've had conversations with people, or even hear other people talk about it, and when they hear the word nostalgia, they almost like it's a 4-letter word. Like, well, no, like, I like this music because, and it's a lot of the hard fact stuff. It's a lot of the the guitar and the sound and this and that, and it's like somehow I feel like to some people the word nostalgia diminishes something about it. Like, it says that you're not a critical listener or something. And I don't agree. Like, I just feel like this, how do you take the nostalgia out of it? In fact, if you don't feel nostalgic for music, I don't want to say I feel sorry for you, but it's like, I feel like you're missing something,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, actually, I don't know if I can even add anything to that. I totally agree. And I don't know, and maybe it's because, and again, I think now there are a lot of people that are into vinyl now, a lot of different ages and men, women, and the whole nine. But I think maybe traditionally with vinyl, especially at the beginning of the resurgence being more of a male dominated type of thing, I think sometimes maybe just kind of going off just the simple concept of emotions and those feelings, which oftentimes is associated with the nostalgia, maybe it's something that's not as natural because like I don't like Led Zeppelin because I have these great loving feelings about them. Like, I like them because they rock. That kind of thing.
They kick ass, yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, right. It's kind of sometimes being more in touch with that emotional side. I get it. Not everyone is like whatever. It just, they're not, it doesn't come as easy for everyone, I guess, to be in touch with that. And that's kind of probably a whole different conversation.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's one of those type of things where you have to kind of sit down and talk to each individual person, because maybe like the word nostalgia doesn't mean the same thing to them as it does to us,
right.
But we actually all are saying the same thing and all are feeling it and that type of thing. So yeah.
Yep.
But that's also the great thing about music, is there is no wrong way to take it in or listen to it or how it affects your life. The way you do it, if you appreciate it and it's making you feel the way you want to feel, you're doing it right.
Well, I'm glad you kind of bring it full circle like that, because it's true, right? Just because we're talking about the emotional aspect of it doesn't mean that we're swearing off every other way to listen to it. In fact,
right.
Both of us listen in a lot of different ways. It's kind of like when I'm listening to jazz music, I feel like I'm listening to it much more like intentionally and critically than when I'm listening to like the Grateful Dead or Journey or something, where it just kind of pours into me and evokes those memories and stuff. But when I'm listening to and I'm just using jazz as an example, but there's other music too that I didn't grow up with. I mean, Led Zeppelin's a good example. I didn't grow up with Led Zeppelin, but I acknowledge that they're an awesome band with incredible, catalog, and love the tunes. In fact, I remember kind of going through, because my dad, we always talked about music, even when we weren't, together. I could call him up, and I remember one time I just had on, I was working during the day, and I just said, I'm just going to listen to every Led Zeppelin album chronologically, just on Spotify while I'm working. And it was, okay, the first one, Zeppelin 2, Zeppelin 3, Zeppelin 4, Houses of the Holy, Physical Graffiti, the whole thing. And when I was done, I was like, is Led Zeppelin the greatest rock band of all time? I mean, do I have to say this now? Because I was so in tune with what was, like I was intentionally going through it. Now, I didn't grow up with it. It wasn't like this was evoking emotion in me. I was just being very objective, and I was vibing, yes. But again, it doesn't go back to like this having any connection to my childhood or anything. And so I call him up. I said, I think Led Zeppelin is the greatest band ever, dude. I mean, what do you have to say to that? I just listen to every record. And they're just unbelievable. And, but anyway, the point being is that, yes, in that case, I'm not listening because it's, connecting me to something from before. I'm listening in a very fresh, sort of, current, intentional way. So,
right.
And yet still enjoyed it just as much, right?
Yeah. Much like the way we experience a lot of things in our lives, where sometimes we want to have relaxed kickback moments with no pressure, nothing to think about. And sometimes we want to be really intense about something. And sometimes we want to be very purposeful and make an impact. And other times so I think music's kind of that allows us to have that exact same thing, where we can kind of take it in at different stages of our existence, if you will. Because like you were saying, when you listen to jazz, you get very intentional and focused on it. And I'm kind of the opposite. When I listen to jazz, I almost start to get very background music with it. Like I love it to death, but I don't get super, super focused on all the different elements that are taking place inside of it. So that's, it's just kind of like a perfect example. It's just, if I'm thinking about kicking back, I'm probably going to jazz. And it sounds like if you're thinking about getting focused and really wanting to take in something good, you're putting on jazz. We're kind of almost like an opposite reason. So I think it's just kind of nice in that regard, just to really, or maybe I shouldn't put it that way. I'll say one of the things that explains my very diverse taste in music is because of that element. Sometimes I want to dance and I don't want it to mean anything. I want it to be the stupidest thing in the world. Yep. Other times I want to walk away with a tear in my eye. Other times I want to release an energy. I want to be intense. I want to let something out. And it's just having that freedom to dive in this world of music where you can experience all those emotions on all those different levels.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I have a very diverse appreciation of music also, and for all the reasons you said. It's like, this is what I need, when I need to just like the B-52s are kind of my go-to when I want to sing and I want to dance, because I've heard it a million times. I know all the lyrics. It's very upbeat and poppy, and very musical and lyrical. I love the lyrics and how kind of sing-songy they are, and integrate themselves so well into kind of the, I know for the composition, really, I mean, of the music. the vocals are an instrument in and of themselves, and so it makes it fun to like sing. So when I need that, boom, I put on Whammy, or I put on, whatever, something like that, because I'm like, okay, this is what I need right now. I just need to get something out, some positive energy. Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, what I like with jazz, what I mean also is because there's a lot of I don't get me wrong, I will listen to jazz and like even like some earlier bebop and stuff like that, just as kind of background music. But yeah, it's interesting. And also too is like, and this is making me think, is that starting a YouTube channel for me, and I don't know, maybe you can relate to this, sort of changed my relationship with music. And I don't want to say with music, but maybe it definitely changed my relationship with records. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to not let it, like I've really tried to just bring who I am and my relationship to records to YouTube and have it go that direction. But I think it's hard to not have it go both ways. And on some level, like I've purchased certain records just so I could do a video or whatever. I want to do a shootout. Let me go get this record. And then if I'm going to do a shootout or I'm going to do a review of a record's music, yeah, that's when I'm listening intentionally. And maybe that's what I mean when that a lot of the jazz listening I've done in the course of the last couple of years has been for YouTube. And it sounds, I don't know how that sounds to people, but it's interesting. I'm just kind of acknowledging it now that in that sense where there's this other, I don't know, motive is the wrong way to say it, but I'm just trying to be as honest and free flowing with my thoughts as possible, is that yes, that's kind of where some of that intentionality has come to in the last couple of years, and jazz has been a big part of that. Mm-hmm. And so it's really kind of, I don't want, maybe forced me is the right word, to kind of be really sort of intentional with listening to jazz, and really getting a different kind of enjoyment out of it as well. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I don't know if that's something that you've noticed with yourself when you started YouTube, or if that had any impact on your listening or just appreciation of records.
I mean, I think if you look at it today, I would say YouTube, like the vinyl community, definitely has an impact, but I've certainly learned to embrace it. After all these years of listening to music and, collecting vinyl and all of that, I've always said, like, I trust myself. Like, I trust myself that I'm going to like the music that I like. I'm going to get the things that I want. I'm going to purge the things that I don't want. So now that I already have that trust and I'm not worried about somebody or something else controlling my listening habits or anything of that nature, I almost kind of like to use it as like you were saying about maybe being influenced by YouTube. I use it as one more way just to kind of guide some easy decisions, such as if there's a record that I would really maybe want to show on an upcoming video. The way I see that is, okay, that's how I'm going to choose what record I'm going to listen to today. And I'll go grab that record and I'll play it, and I'll end up showing that in my next What's Been Spinning video. Other times I'll walk around and just blindly grab something out of the stack and just start playing it. Mm-hmm. So someone does a video and they're talking about an artist and it just kind of gets me thinking about it. I may go and grab it. So for me, it's just, I don't have to limit myself to one way of how I go about selecting what I want to listen to out of my collection, where I like everything. And so like if one of those things is wanting to do like a showdown, like you were saying, or if one of those things is just because I just want to show this record in my next video, that's a good enough reason for me to go grab it and listen to it. And I just kind of embrace that. The one thing I say that I have kind of made sure I've kept control of is I haven't gotten focused on building my channel and trying to get all of these subs and, doing very specific things that might bring about 10,000 more subs. Every time I click record, I'm doing something that I really want to do in that moment and talking about something I want to do in that moment. Totally. But other than that, it's like, I love when someone throws something out there. And someone asked the other day, like, hey, I like to see your Depeche Mode collection. Would you maybe show that in a video? And I'm going to do it. But it also made me think, let me go listen to some of my Depeche Mode. Yep. And I spun Violator last night and I have a couple other things on deck. So, I don't mind that influence at all. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great way to look at it. And I think that's exactly what I'm saying, is just sort of like, you'll have this, it kind of goes, there's like this loop of, I want to talk about some jazz, and then it goes to,
well, what would be something that someone might be interested in? Of course, starting with my taste. I'm not going to talk about something I'm not interested in. And then I go and listen to it. And so, but without YouTube, or if I wasn't making a video, I would have never went to that. Like you said, maybe I wouldn't be picking up Depeche Mode today. But I like how you said it, because you framed it, I think, in the right way, which is just, is that influence, and just kind of go with it. And, not, because I'll be honest, and again, I don't want to make this about YouTube and stuff, but I sort of try to avoid outside influence from YouTube. I don't really watch, a lot of the channels. I watch my friends and stuff like that, but I don't try to get influence from what other people are doing and stuff, because I want it to be really about me, you know, and also I'll feel, because I want it to be more personal, if someone else does a video on, for example, Depeche Mode, then I might say, oh, they just did one. Now, if I do one, it's going to seem, you know what I mean? And then it'll start influencing me that way. I don't want that. Either way, yeah. I don't want to feel discouraged. I don't want to feel encouraged. I just want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And so I try to just kind of, and I am someone that will, I will pick up on that stuff. I guess, I don't know what you want to call it, but sort of as kind of someone with an artistic background, it is sort of like I'm looking at things very creatively. And when I see someone else do something, I'll have a reaction to it. I'll either, whereas maybe someone else would say, feel perfectly fine. Oh, they just did a record. They just did a video on Depeche Mode. I think I'm going to go do my Depeche video, which is probably the healthy way to do it. Right. I wouldn't do that. I would be like, oh, now I can't do it, so anyway, I like literally try to turn that part off so that it doesn't influence me, but whether for better or worse, I don't know.
Well, yeah, like I was saying before, again, you're someone who's been around music forever. You've been collecting, forever and so forth. I mean, you know yourself, you trust yourself. So if something in your gut tells you, hey, I don't want to do a follow-up video after someone else does it, that's just not my thing. It's like, well, you just trust it and roll with it. I mean, you're a seasoned enough music lover and collector that you can allow yourself to feel what you feel and be okay with it. That's the way I see it, at least.
This is like therapy now, man. Yeah. Thanks for saying that, dude. All right, man. I want to thank you guys for listening today. Brandon and I want to make this a regular thing. We want to do this every other week. We're going to do an episode and shoot it out to you guys. And again, we really want to kind of emphasize the emotional aspect of it, the connections that we have to memories, maybe even the 4-letter word nostalgia, and kind of get into that part of it. But we also want to take a deep dive into the diversity of music and just how music can introduce us cross-culturally to maybe people that we wouldn't connect with any other way. Somehow with music, we can kind of connect those cultures, the diversity.
No, yeah, I think that actually that'd be great. I mean, that's one of the things that's so magical about music is you can just be one soul sitting in your room, sitting in your chair, and what you can put in your ears and experience can be like so many elements of so many different backgrounds, cultures, people that you've just never had an opportunity to interact with or get to know, and just really kind of discover the beauty that flows around so many different places. So definitely doing a deep dive into kind of the beauty of diversity that music can bring to the table, I think would be awesome. Yeah.
Yep. I think that's going to be fun. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. We want to get your thoughts. Make sure you guys let us know what you think. Leave some comments in the comment section. Hit that like button if you like what you heard. Again, we got some fun stuff coming up in the future. Let us know, too, if you have ideas for episodes or anything like that. We would be happy to hear them. Appreciate you guys watching. And Brandon, appreciate you, man. I think this was fun, dude. I'm glad we finally got this kicked off.
Yeah, I know. It's been great, man. This is one of the type of podcast I've been waiting for quite some time. We just getting back to the good feelings of what these black wax things bring to the table.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. All right, you guys, thanks so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.